to this follow-up tutorial on the conveyor system. I'm Lonnie Bush, Airbush One Studio, and if you followed along in the previous conveyor system tutorial, why don't you open up your file, and if you haven't, I am going to provide this clean start file on my website. You can download that. So we got a lot of cool stuff to go over today. It could be a two-parter, I think. But a lot of neat stuff we're going to cover. Before we get started, I want to give you a short overview of what we're going to do. I've got a spline here, and this represents our conveyor spline, and I'm measuring the length of it. This is the length, so if I change that dimension, it changes the length. I also have a straight spline in here that is referencing this rectangle spline, and if I update this, you can see that they're both the same length. And if I increase that and update this, they're exactly the same length. And put this back to 400, update that. So I have a cloner here, and I've cloned some cubes onto this rectangle. All right, and I also have a cloner and clone cubes onto this straight spline. And if I take this rectangle spline and move it over, you see they line up pretty much exactly. All right, and if this is the controller for the main rectangle, and if I increase this, okay, all right, looks like they're not lining up, but actually if we move this over, again, they line up perfectly. And if we go in and take our two cloners, all right, and I put the rate to, let's say 5, and you'll see that no matter what, they keep lining up, even though we've changed the size of the spline. And another part of this, which we're going to get to later in the tutorial, this is the basis of how we're going to first set things up, and that is the conveyor belt, okay? And I also have the width of the conveyor belt determined by this main rectangle spline. As you can see, the width of this, not the length, but the width, is exactly the same. And if I pull that down here, you can see that our clones would fit on top of that perfectly. So this is just a quick overview to show you what we're going to be doing, and I'm going to show you how to set all this up, because we have to basically set this up the same way. The first thing I want to do is clean this up a little bit. So let's get a null and just call this conveyor. And if you will, just drag it below the main rectangle. We're not going to put that in there. And just drag all this stuff into here. And while we're at it, we might as well turn off the carriage shake. We don't want that right now, or this dumper thing. Okay? And I want to put this on a layer. So if you have if you're using a mouse, middle mouse click this, which selects everything in the hierarchy. Then come down and put add to new layer. And we're just going to call this conveyor. All right, and white's fine. The next thing I want to do is fix the carriages. I don't think the top is going to be open wide enough for what we want to do. And so just come into the carriage and deselect the cloner, so we just have the carriage. And I'm not going to hide the rest of this stuff. So I want to go about this a little different way, because I want to spread the top of this, and if we just go in here and select these 8 points, oops, and if we pull this apart, you see it works, but these sides are getting wider than the rest, so I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to click away and go into polygon mode and deselect if there's any polygons selected. And if you hit UL, that brings up the loop selection tool, or you can go in here to loop selection. And I want you to select this top loop, hold down shift, select that loop, and then get your select tool and just grab that bottom. And then just delete that. Okay, so we just have the inner part. Now if you go into point mode, you're going to see a lot of extra points from the polygons we deleted. But if you click away, make sure none are selected. This is the best way to get rid of unused points is come down to optimize, and that removes everything that's not connected. Now it only works if you've deselected any points. If any points are selected, it doesn't work. So let's go into points mode, and let's just grab these top 4 points. All right, and make sure nothing else is selected. All right, and before we do anything, I want to go up here to character and grab a pose morph tag and go into attributes, select points, and we'll change that in a minute. And just hold down T, and we'll just scale this out on X. And you can scale it out pretty wide, okay, because we're going to adjust it. And that looks pretty good. And go back into my pose morph, make sure it's working. Yep, looks good. Okay. So hit the animate. Oops, actually, let's go back in there and just change this to carriage width. Okay. And then go into animate. That looks good. All right, I'm going to deselect those points, go back into model mode. And a couple things, our Fong is really bad, and if we drag this down below 60, yeah, right there, right there, we should get nice clean edges all the way around. All right, and what I want to do is take this carriage width, and we're just going to drag it into the HUD for a minute and click show always. That way it's handy if we need to adjust it, and it works pretty cool. So we need to give this some more thickness back, and we're going to do that by holding down Option, and we're going to simulate cloth. And so that cloth tag will become a parent of the carriage, and 0 subdivisions. And want to put this out in negative, and about 15 is good. Now you see what's happening. Let me go into line mode here, and maybe you can see it better. We've got a weird situation where this is real thin and this is nice size. So what we want to do is select parallel, and now it'll all be the same. Okay. So I'm going to get this back into just route shading, and let's activate our cloner, and now we've got all our carriages. Now we can do this on the fly and get these adjusted. I'm going to put mine probably about there, about 80%. Yours would probably be different if you pulled it out different than I did. Okay. Oop, not sure what happened there. Okay. So let's go back to 0. Now what we want to do is I want to add 2 nulls into viewport. 1, 2. Let's name this top one start. Oops. Start. And the other one end. And we're going to take both of them together. Let's make it, choose for the display a sphere. Make it 40 centimeters and choose XZ. And for the start, I'm going to make it a green. And of course for the end, make it a red. And this just makes it easier to see in the viewport what we're doing. Okay, so I want to take both of these and raise them up to 1070 on Y. Now, I'm doing that because of the size of my conveyor. If you changed your size of your conveyor when you built it, that's fine. Everything should still work, but I'm going to go into front mode and just get your nulls close, about that distance, maybe a carriage height from your conveyor, just so the clones aren't dropping a long distance. All right, so I'm going to take the start null, and I'm just going to drag it out, okay? And this end null, I want to go in there and right-click and choose a protection tag. Because I don't want that to be able to move, and you see all the arrows are grayed out. So we're good there. All right. So let's get another null, and we're going to call this cargo, or lack of a better name. And I'm going to drag it down below. Everything is going to be pulled down below this main rectangle because that is what we're basing everything off of. Oh, didn't make it in. And let's go ahead and grab a espresso tag for that cargo. And it opens up. And so the first thing we want to do is pull in the main rectangle. And that's the one from our conveyor system. And we want to go over in here in New Node, Espresso General, and come down to Spline. And if you click on the object port and hold it, drag over to the red square and release, and you just grab object, it'll hook it up. And we don't really care about the position, but we do want the length. And let's go General, Espresso, and Result. And I'm going to hook that up. And it takes a second. And let's pull that out so we can see it. So 5317.114. I do want, animation refresh is on. Good. And let's put a text object in the file. Pull it down into cargo. We're going to drag that down into here. Now, you can find what we need, object properties, down in here. And there's our text. Or if you want, and whatever way you want, but this is an easy way also if it's already active, is you can just pull in the text or whatever parameter you want from there. And I'm going to drag that right into there. And so, and I want to take this to the middle. Okay. So there's our length, and we want to keep an eye on that. And I do want to color this too so we can see it. And we'll just make it blue. It's fine. All right, so that is the measurement of our main rectangle spline. That's the length of it. All right, so now I want to pull my start null in. And before we do, I'm going to go look at it. And you notice I pulled it over here because this is where I want my clones to start. And if I go into coordinates, you see it's a negative number. Okay, that's we want a minus number. So right off the bat, I know it's in X. And so I'm going to grab coordinates. And go down to position and just position X. And also we need to, what I want to do is make this spline the same exact length as our main rectangle spline. So if we go into New Node Espresso Calculate, we can get this negate node. And basically what that's going to do is turn our length into a negative number. We're going to pull that into position X. And that should jump out. So now, if we go to our start, 5317.114. And so let's grab the start and end null and go to Mograph and grab a tracer. Go in here and just say connect objects. All right. And we have our spline. And just to keep track of it, we're going to pull it down here also. Actually, we're going to pull it down here. And we're going to pull it into here. Okay. So let's see. Yep, I want this one and the result node. So let's pull them both down. All I did was select them and then control drag. Click on this, hold it, let go, object, and we see that of course it's the same, which it should be. I want to change the color of this particular expression to just make it a green. And then I'll make this one a different color when it's done. That way, when you get in here, once we have a lot of expressions, you'll be able to tell which ones are connected to what and pretty quickly be able to tell what it's for. All right, so let's get another text object. And I'm going to put this one under the main rectangle. No, I'm not. I'm going to put it under the tracer. So I'm going to drag it up here. I'm going to drag this into here. And I'm going to drag this into here. And we're going to hook that up. We got our number. And I am going to just, for my own reasons, put it to middle. And I am going to pull that out. I don't want to mess with that. And so let's just make this blue also. If you want to make it a different shade of blue, I'll make mine a little greener blue. Okay. I made a little bit. Okay. Now we've got both of our figures. All right. And let's go ahead and make this a color. Nope, wait a minute, we already have green. Okay. All right. Okay, so let's start making our cargo. And so we need a cloner, of course, Mograph cloner right there. Let's go ahead and drag this in, and I'm going to drag it below that tracer. And let's pull a cube in there. I'm going to stick it in the cloner, and I want to make that cube 60 square. So if you hit 60, tab, 60, tab, 60, that should do it. And let's put 3 divisions, 3, 3, 3. Actually, you know what? Let's make it 6. Okay. Now, right now we are, you know what? Let's just turn this off for a second. Right now we are cloning in Y, and we want to clone in Z. All right. And I'm going to pull out 7. That's what I've been working with. And you can make adjustments to any of this stuff later on. But, okay. So we need one more cloner. I've got mine up here. I'm going to drag it under the tracer. I'm going to drag this cloner into that cloner. And we want to clone onto our tracer. So go into object mode, drag the tracer into there. Let's go in here and let's make this even. Unclick per segment, but put in smooth rotation. And let's see. Okay, so what we want to do is transform this 90 degrees. All right. And we're going to the main matrix. And if you went through the conveyor tutorial, you remember we used 34. Now that was 34 matrices, but the carriage, we only have half of those. So what we want in this cloner are 17 lines, okay? So put 17, and that looks good. And if we put this rate at 6, we should get some clones marching along. Okay, all right, so that's good. Okay, let's turn our conveyor back on in the layer so we can see it. We may not be able to tell much from this. Tell one thing from this. I can tell that the not lined up, and that's fine. We're gonna take care of that right now. So we could move our nulls, but I really don't want to move those. Okay, and we have this one locked off, so that could cause problems. But if you grab your main rectangle, it's very simple. Just move it down. And I'm going to get it about there. Actually, I think we're good. That looks good. So I've got my clones. If your clones are spaced out too much and it looks like they're going to hit these outer edges, then just go in and squash them down. Let's see, where are we? Oh, no, wrong cloner. Okay, you know what? We're going to fix that right now. This is going to be the cube cloner, cube cargo cloner. And this is going to be the cargo line cloner. All right, so we can tell the difference. Okay, so if we go into this, if you're too long, just position it at this end and drag this to wherever you need. And if you need some incremental measurements, just hold down Option key. So I've got 78.2. I'll just get rid of the 0.2. And that looks good, at least for now. Oh, I'm going to stay in top mode. So what I want to see is, I want to see how the speed, how things are lining up. And yeah, just as I thought, you can't tell anything. Well, actually, they are disappearing right here at that space. So it looks pretty good. All right, so let's go in and get some dynamics so we can tell more. And something I want to do is, I've got a red material in here. If you don't have a material, just grab one. It doesn't matter. I just want to put this on the conveyor just so we can see a little more differentiation between the cubes and the conveyor. So with that cube cargo cloner selected, let's go down here to simulation, and we want to put a rigid body tag on that. The dynamics, we want to put on collision for that, okay? And in the collision, you want to make sure this is put to, actually, no, for the cubes we can leave that as automatic, but here we want to put all. All right, so let's see. Nothing should happen because, okay. So what happened there, I think, is it was a loop collision. All right, so let's go back into, well, before we do that, let's get a polygon. All right, and let's just pull it up and put it in plus X. And that's going to give us the correct orientation. And the length doesn't matter. Well, it does matter. I'm sorry. It has to go. It has to extend beyond the ends of the cubes both ways. Okay, so that in that way it matters a lot. And then we're just going to pull this down. And you know, right now it's right at our end place, and that's good. We may move it in slightly. As a matter of fact, I'll go ahead and move it now, because what we want to do is this is going to activate the dynamics that when they collide with this, and we want that collision to happen before before that set of cubes disappears, just like it did there, okay? And so in B on this polygon, let's put that to about -30, looks good, okay? And I think we're okay. If you need to move it in again because the axis, grab your world axis, and then you can just move it in a little more. And we're going to pull this down into our cargo, and we're going to grab a simulation tag and make it a collider body. And I think pretty much everything can stay the same there. So let's just run this and just see what happens. Okay. Yeah, they're falling in about the same spot each time. And that's working good. Okay. So I don't want to look at this. So I'm going to click it off. Oops, actually, yeah. All right. And so let's go back into top view. And actually, let's go back into front view. Yeah. So I kind of know that to get this close to lining up where I want it. Why is nothing? Oh, these things are not in the actual. There we go. If we line this up with this third hub right about on that line there, okay? And so I'm just going to move the main rectangle over till that lines up about, I can't even remember now. I think that's right. We'll figure it out. All right, so let's just stay in the front view because it's easier to see what's happening. They're going through because we haven't made the carriages dynamic, but I am still not liking that. Let's see one more. Okay, I want to pull it this way slightly. Before we get too carried away though, I forgot to do something. Let's go into dynamics, and in general, I want to put this to 2000. I found that I don't know, it just seems to work better. They fall really fast. And they fall straighter down. But those are all falling right into the carriages. We want to go into our conveyor and go into our Carriage Cloner. So let's put a simulation tag on here. And again, we want a collider body. Dynamics is immediate, of course. Collision is not automatic. You need to have moving mesh, okay? And we need to come down. This is really important to put that to all. If you don't put this to all and you just have moving mesh, it looks like it's working, but then you get these clones boiling over here for some weird reason. So let's hit play and see how this works. That looks good. That looks good. They're all falling. It seems like the cycle is about 4. They get a little off and then they straighten back out. And I think it has to do with this irregular spacing between these. But that's all working real well. Okay. So one thing I want to do, I didn't adjust this, and it's working fine, but go into your Carriage Cloner and let's reduce the bounce down to 0. And I want to do that with our cargo itself and reduce that down to 0. We really don't want a lot of bounce on this, okay? while we're here, let's go ahead and go into our conveyor, and let's turn on this carriage, which is spelled wrong, dumper plane. You know, remember the effector we used to dump these? And I'm going to make that visible for us right now. And so I don't really want to dump them over here. I want to kind of do it the way I had it on the video, for the lead-in video for this tutorial. And I'm going to put it over here. And let's see if that's going to work as far as if they're turned long enough to allow these cubes to fall out. And so we're still playing pretty fast, and there's no reason to bake this yet. But as we move along, especially after we get these belts built, we're going to have to bake this. And it's not long. You know, on my computer, it may take a minute or something, and I'll just cut that out at the time, you know, on the video itself. Okay, everything, that all looks great. So one last thing. I don't know if you remember or could tell from the video. Hopefully you could. There's a chute down below here. And I'm going to go ahead and build that right now. So just put a cube in there. This doesn't have to be exact. It just has to make sure that it catches all the cargo coming out. Yeah, let's go into top view and see if I can see it a little better. Yeah. So you just have to be wider than the carriages. I don't want it to be a lot wider. Let's see. That actually looks pretty good. Let's go back into perspective. I'm going to pull that down a little bit and pull it over. And that looks good. So go ahead and convert that. Hit the C key. Come in and remove this polygon, that polygon. And there shouldn't be any errant points, but just in case, we'll optimize. And we'll go back into model mode. And again, I want to, I'm going to hold down Option, go up to Simulate Cloth Surface. And once again, we don't need the extra subdivisions. And we should be, nope, this time we want to go positive, positive 26, just so that the stuff looks nicer. Now for some reason, this works fine without the parallel. Let's put parallel on. Not sure what happened there. Oh, I see. Okay, so let's keep that on, and we can reduce this down. All right, that looks good. I'm going to throw this color on there, and I'm going to put chute in front of this. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and make that part of the cargo. And just for, it doesn't have to go at the bottom. I'm just going to put it at the bottom. Oops, and put it outside. Okay. So we need to go to the front view, and we need to angle this slightly. So I don't know. I mean, just enough to make them slide down. That should do it. And don't forget, by the end of this, the cubes, we won't have cubes coming out of this carriage. They're going to be spheres. So they will roll quite easily. So let's go in here, grab this chute. We want a simulation tag. We want a collider. And again, we have to change this automatic to static mesh. And that's really about all we need. And so I'm going to hit play again. So that's all working good. Look at that. Okay, I'm happy. All right, so I think that's all for this first part, and let's go to part 2 and build our conveyor belts and do all our magical transformation on these cubes.